All right, straight into the next one. Hamza is going to talk to us about, I'm really fascinated by this one. Hamza's going to talk to us about real-time virtual agronomy. Over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, everyone. As you said, my name is Hamza Qadoumi. I'm one of the founders and CEO of Ecobloom. And you are absolutely right. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about, uh, you know, the world's first real-time virtual agronomist. It sounds very interesting, and the thing is, in our case, we've been working within this field of monitoring, and how do we go from monitoring to thinking? So I want to share now and how we're moving beyond dashboards and into a new era of agronomic reasoning. And obviously, this is where our industry needs to go, and how we see the future of farming looking like. So, briefly about how we see the industry today. We've all been through this, as growers and being in this field of CEA. We get a lot of alerts. There's a lot of data, a lot of alerts. Temperatures being high, humidity spiked, CO2 dropped, and being in this industry and having been in this industry for many years now, we keep seeing the same pattern over and over again. And the question that growers ask themselves is, uh, what does this mean? Why is this occurring? Current dashboards are observation tools, not decision tools. They answer what, but never why or what's next. As you can see here, data doesn't equal decisions. There's plenty of data and we are being bombarded with data, but we need to make sense of that data. Dashboard shows what is happening, but they want to know why and what to do. Rather than providing with reactive measures, they want proactive measures. And this is something we keep seeing over and over again in this industry. Um, and obviously, being bombarded with this type of information, a lot of notifications, it just gets too much, overcrowded, just too much. And there's no real context because there's so many parameters that one has to factor in when trying to understand the root cause of what's happening. And this is something we've also learned a lot about, various factors, about everything about the capabilities of the farm to the seed variety that the growers are using and growing, etc. And we'll talk a little bit about more about that in a bit. And the evolution of crop monitoring, as we've seen it, we've gone through three generations. The first generation is manual sensors and loggers, as we can see here. We're monitoring things in a very manual and very resource intensive way. And in many of the farms we've seen and now work with, prior to working with them, they've shared stories about how they've had to call in experts, um, these advisors that would fly over from one country to another and literally just walk inside the greenhouse and tell them that, hey, your humidity is too high, that's why your yield has reduced by 9%. So this is it's quite fascinating because that's still a very manual way of monitoring, including handheld devices that we see a lot of growers walking around with, and again, literally documenting on pen or paper. So manual data collection, that's the first generation that we've seen. The second generation, and that's also, as we see the dashboards and alerts, we see visual reporting, we have thresholds. This is important, but it's still just the what. And this is where most of the industry is today. And the third generation, as we've seen and it changes everything really. And instead of showing data, it thinks about your data. That's the big difference. And this is the AI agronomist that we call it. It uses reasoning and action plans and really intelligent predictions. Growers want to know what will happen tomorrow and what should I do today. And this part is, especially with all the tools that we're starting to see more and more within the world of AI, this becomes even more so important and really validates and confirms that step that we need to take within this field and industry. And there's a big gap here between generation 2 and generation 3. And I will be talking a little bit more about generation 3. And the practical difference here is, as you can see on the left, this is the typical workflow. The alarm goes off, they will check the dashboard, and they will typically guess what the root cause is, what needs to be done. They will try something and then they will wait. In many cases, they will wait several days. And by that time, the problem and the issue will have already occurred. The damage is already done. On the right side, in this particular case, the AI will catch early signals, signals that might not necessarily be visible to the human eye. As we know, most of farming is visual. So catching these early signs, which with of course cross-referencing, and this is also very key to cross-reference what we detect with climate data and other types of input. And this allows one to identify the root cause, which will then, and only then, will be able to deliver an action plan to the grower with clear steps on what needs to be taken. What is the root cause? Here's a checklist and an action plan. This is what growers need. This is the type of advice. This is the new generation advisor. It's a virtual advisor rather than a human, which is typically resource intensive. There's always human error, and it's impossible for a human to manually analyze all these inputs and these millions of data points that is being captured by our system. And so comparing again with the reactive reporting, by the time a reactive system alerts you, the damage is typically already done. So the difference here is intelligence, not so much speed. So understanding and seeing these correlations. And how to transform data into reasoning. This is, again, to really kind of break this down and how to do so. In our case, we're applying the visual aspect includes multispectral imaging and multispectral cameras. So using computer vision as most of farming is visual, coupled with climate sensors and weather forecasts. So what makes this different is the fusion of all three. We combine these three streams where multispectral camera sees stress in the light spectrum before you can see it. We are limited to the visible light, whereas using multispectral imaging and other types of more advanced cameras allows us to see bands beyond the visible light on the electromagnetic spectrum. Combined with climate sensors that will capture the environment inside the indoor farm, plus weather forecast, which let us predict what is coming. And the AI cross-references all of these to produce the root cause diagnosis and the prescriptive action plans, and not just charts. Again, moving away from just data. So you will have very clear understanding of, based on what we're measuring now, based on the weather forecast, this is what you need to do tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. For example, if there's a heat wave coming in 3 days, the AI will be able to understand, and as part of the action plan, it will be able to recommend what is the irrigation strategy that you need to think about tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, prior to the heat wave coming. Same with windows, suggesting how often, when the window should be open versus closed, and to what extent. Again, this is now optimizing and really in depth the production process. The cameras capture 4 spectral bands, but the real value isn't in the image itself. It's in what the AI does with the image. It computes vegetation indices per plant. It tracks them over time and flags anomalies before they become visible problems. Healthy plant typically absorb more red and blue, which reflects more NIR. Stressed plants reflect more red and blue, absorb more NIR. So this is the just multispectral, how the multispectral part works. And the core differentiator here is that the system doesn't just say that health dropped, because which it analyzes health and stress levels. But again, why is my health dropping? Why is my health increasing? Why is this section of my farm always producing and performing better? So what it says is health dropped in zone 3 because of air temperature exceeded 30 degrees Celsius while airflow was low. The root cause is insufficient screening in this particular case. And here's what to do about it. Add shading between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., bring ppfd down to 300 micromoles. That's reasoning, not reporting, and this is key in the third generation that we're talking about now. Using this type of imaging, this is what we see as humans when we walk around and doing our crop walks and manually inspect. Whereas the multispectral, what the camera sees are early signs of different types of diseases. And the AI is trained to identify various diseases and pests and other anomalies like tipburn and thrips and spider mite, etc., etc. So it understands based on many, many different parameters, visual parameters, but also again coupled with the climate conditions and the weather forecast. And the weather forecast is good to understand what the strategies should be in the coming days. Whereas combining visual plus climate conditions inside the greenhouse or the indoor farm allows us to understand the root cause and what's actually being detected right now. And to communicate this on a plant level to the grower, it will also notify, not only inform about what is the issue, but also show which plants have been detected, what is the type of detection and what needs to be done, what is the recommended actions to be taken based on the capabilities of that farm. So that's also extremely important. Now, having this information, and of course, now we're seeing one way of communicating information, communicating reasoning, and providing with deep insights and valuable information to the grower. Whereas now we're opening up the channel backwards. So you as a grower are able to communicate with the AI and not just getting a response about like general information, but it's information based on the images that are being monitored, the plants that are being monitored in your facility, the climate conditions in your facility. So each recommendation, each response is tailored specifically to your setup, your greenhouse or indoor farm. And a layer to that, which we're now beta testing, is to allow the grower, the AI, to also control aspects of your farm. Of course, always confirming by the grower. The growers will always confirm this. So you are able to get information, ask questions, very specific and detailed questions, and get recommendations based on what you need. And you're also able to allow the AI to make those decisions for you. So for example, if the windows is, or again, using the heat wave example, if there's a heat wave coming in and we know that we need to adjust the irrigation strategies for 2 days prior to the heat wave coming in. So you will receive the suggestion, a detailed suggestion on what to do, and you can allow the AI to control the control system in your facility to adjust and control the irrigation or the lighting or the curtains, the shades, the windows, etc. It all depends on the type of control system and climate computer that you use, because if it's open, then we can connect to it. That's also something we're seeing more of in the industry, that more and more companies are opening up for this type of API integration and calibration, or connection rather. So having this, let's say, real-time diagnostics, which is extremely important, detecting stress and anomalies on a specific plant level, and being able to detect these things up to 10 days before the human eye can see it. This allows us to make intelligent predictions and provide with proactive measures rather than reactive measures. An action plan on what needs to be done is very important, because growers keep asking, what do I need to do? What is the root cause and what should I do next? And of course, always speaking in the language, using the grower's lingo, which is key in this particular case. And as the time goes, each day by day, the system adapts more to your infrastructure. It learns more about your ways of working, and it will provide with even more detailed and dynamic and recommended and tailored recommendations. And of course, in our case, we've been working on over 60 crop varieties today, starting with leafy greens and herbs, and we've tested this concept in an approach in other facilities today around the world, used in different crop varieties. So today we have monitoring everything from high wire crops to leafy greens and herbs and medicinal cannabis and ornaments as well. Now, this is what we call the EcoSense Farm Brain. And the EcoSense Farm Brain, as I mentioned, is this kind of closed loop integration with the local control system. We're getting input from the climate, we're getting input from the images, we're getting input from other parts of the facility, And then that allows us to connect to the climate control, to the lighting control, integrating it with a local ERP system to provide with yield forecast, schedule optimization, and of course, irrigation. And we're starting with a couple of these, let's say, aspects of the farm and continuously expanding. And of course, the more one can do, the more open the system is, the better. As we've seen with Privan, Ridder, and Hugendorn, most of them are, relatively open, and more companies and more control system providers are opening up for this type of integration. And the system doesn't just react to what's happening now, it predicts what's coming. So disease forecasting uses, as I mentioned, climate trajectories and historical data to flag risks before conditions become dangerous. Having this type of historical data allows us to also study the patterns in the climate to see when are we entering a certain danger zone for, say, botrytis, and do so many days before it actually occurs at the earliest signs, and even predicting based on historical data and climate patterns. Yield prediction uses growth curve modeling, and weather integration means we can preemptively adjust indoor conditions before outer weather affects the greenhouse, because there's a direct correlation between what's happening outside and inside the facility. And this is mainly for greenhouses, as we are able to utilize natural resources like natural light, for example. And these aren't just lab numbers. As we see here, this has been proven, and we see this in many case studies that we've performed and conducted around the world in different types of commercial farms. We see a huge added revenue at single deployments, and understanding and detecting up to 10 days earlier before it's visible to the human eye has also been proven extremely important as part of providing this type of prediction. Huge reduction in waste through disease forecasting, and providing with proactive measures to optimize strategies, reduce waste, which of course in turn increases yield, which is what most growers want to do. They want to maximize and optimize yield because it's a relatively low margin business today. And of course, energy being a huge subject today and a huge topic, which is extremely important. How do we optimize energy consumption? How do we reduce energy consumption? How do we optimize the lighting and climate control? And today we're seeing this in 12 countries around the world being currently live and being tested. So this AI Agronomist is currently live across the world right now. So it's not about more data, it's about better thinking, about reasoning. And we are, extremely excited and very hopeful about the future and what is to come, and are always open to explore and introduce this to anyone who might be interested. And of course, learn more. We will happily share case studies and share some examples and also our insights from having been in the industry for a while. So if you're interested, please reach out, and here's a QR code where you can directly link to my email as well. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hamza. Quick public service announcement before I jump into the Q&A. Across today, I've seen a couple of people asking whether it's possible to get PDFs of presentations that are doing the rounds. If you would like a copy of slides, what you'll need to do is reach out to the presenter in question, in this case, Hamza. And he can decide whether he's willing to share those slides with you, or use the QR code that's there, where you may also be able to get a variety of other useful information. But yeah, reach out to the speakers, talk to them. That's the way that you can find more information of whatever kind you may need. So with that said, moving on to the questions, we've got one from in the audience here. For example, to get us started, are you tech agnostic, i.e. can you use data from any multispectral camera and/or climate sensors, or do you require growers to have your or other specific sensors as well?
Very good question. Yes, yes, we're not dependent on our hardware. We can pull data from existing tech, whether it's cameras or other climate sensors, which we do in other cases as well, where they might have climate sensors. Typically, it's that that is typically what they would have. Very few have cameras, but the ones that do, we can always pull that information, analyze the images as we would with our own camera. So we offer our own, of course, hardware, but we can also utilize the existing infrastructure. So we try to adapt to what you have rather than the other way around.
Okay, cool. Thank you. There's a couple of points I wanted to pick up on actually, which was you sort of mentioned bits of this, but like, even the best AI can be wrong ultimately, right? So how important is it to always have that kind of that human who's ultimately accountable for this still?
Exactly, and excuse my French, but shit in, shit out when it comes to data. So it's extremely important to have very, clean, good data that is properly filtered and analyzed and confirmed, etc., etc. So there are many steps to that process, and involving, one, when it comes to the insights that's provided. In our particular case, we always stress test our AI models and algorithms in our own R&D facility. We work with also some leading agricultural research institutes and academia. So we do these experiments and perform other types of projects, that are not necessarily commercial, but also from a research point of view. And again, especially in this third generation where the AI becomes somewhat of a Jarvis, that also controls aspects of your farm, it's really important to involve the grower in that process and have them confirm. It's like autonomous vehicles. The steering wheel is not really necessary, but it's there because you have to kind of go through this process of one, trusting the car, and but also being in somewhat of control just in case. So you are always in control in case you need to take over the steering wheel. And this is the same concept and approach that we want to give the growers, still the full control, but it's assisting them.
Okay. No, that's really interesting. I like that analogy actually, the steering wheel. That's quite nice. Um, Here's a question from within our audience. How do you handle growers' data? Who owns the data that is presumably being constantly used to help train the model?
The who owns the data is always the grower. They always own the data, so they are the owner of the data. We have access and we can utilize the data, which is just kind of the nature of AI. You need to train it and you need to continuously improve the algorithm. So having access to it is necessary, of course. But the growers always owns the data, so the data is not shared in any way, shape, or form.
Right. And just one last question quickly, if I may. Picking up on what I was talking about a moment ago, you mentioned about weather forecasts, for example, and I think this is quite an indicative example, which is why I've picked on it a little bit. Weather forecasts aren't always all that reliable. So if the system is making a prediction, but then things change, how is the system able to respond to that? Like, because that's the real time bit, right?
Exactly, and that's the key word, right? Real time. So you would have, you the measurements are frequently. It's in real time. We're capturing images and data points from whether it's the sensors inside the greenhouse or the local weather station, for example.
Hmm.
So if things change, if the heat wave now all of a sudden is it's snowing, there's not a heat wave coming in, it's going to be a lot of a snowstorm. So then the system will pick up on that and will notify and recommend accordingly as well. So
Okay.
it will update as well the recommendations because it's in real time. So it will always ping you, and it's we're trying to do this also in a very seamless way. So you're being pinged literally on your phone. You're getting a text message saying, "Hey, Mark, this is the new weather forecast. This will change this strategy. This is what you need to do, X, Y, and Z." So it will
Okay.
always adapt.
I think that's great because obviously you don't want to end up with a prediction that's no good anymore. So that's good to hear.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, Hamza. Well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this. I mean, it's fascinating to see where these kind of AI technologies are going, heading to, and where they're coming in and where they're making an impact. So, thank you so much for joining us today. As I say, do reach out to Hamza through the platform or elsewhere. And yeah, thank you very much. And we'll be back with our next speaker in just a moment.
Thank you.